School of the Orixas. EKORISA Afro-Cientirat Pedagogy and Education. I love the Africa of my ancestrals and I'm proud to be Black 21st century African Renaissance. Work carried out in compliance with Law 10,639/03, Afro-Brazilian and African Culture in Education. Ivan Poly OSUNFEM by ELEDUIBON. Pedagogy of the Orixas EKORIA Ivan D. A. Silva Poly OSUNFEM by ELEDUIBON. I dedicate this work to my late spiritual brother Ogum D. who was in Brazil between February and May 2015, my brother from the diaspora who initiated me in the study of the cult of Ifa in his quality as a Babalawo and son of the orbit of Osogbo in Nigeria. Spiritual leader, head of the Balabolka family. My dad spiritual. I dedicate it his constructions also at leaders traditional of rebirth African, as my dad Ifemi and Prince Serge Guzo, heir to the throne of Dahomey, who recognize me, so like mine work, like member and part of this rebirth. I cannot fail to mention in this dedication my thanks to Mother Stella Diaco Ko, Maria Stella in Azevedo Saints, 1925 to 2018, so as at your precursors matriarchs of the LX Opio of Fonte, Oba B. Mayananhog, Eugenia Ana dos Santos, 1869 to 1938, Hoxam New and Mother Senora, Maria Babayana. Do Eshrito Santa, 1890 to 1967, and Edwintona Mother Mies Inha, Andina Valeria Pigmental, 1916 to 1975, all with their histories of true heroines in the defense of our traditional communities of African origin, as well as the values civilizing what one nation inherited from these traditions. Influence gives affirmation cultural and identity about O Performance School. Other authors question and criticize the so-called sociologies of reproduction and the sociological determinism of Bourdieu's theory. Among them, I consider relevant, for the subject in question, the researches of Bernard Charlotte, especially the work on the relationship with knowledge. This author starts your constructions stressing what no it is possible studying a failure school as if study of any sociological object, but that it is possible to study subjects in a situation of school failure. For many sociologists, explain a failure school it is explained why what and, at times, as you students they are led to occupy this or that position in the school space. Charlotte, 2000, page 19. This is the objective of the so-called sociologies of reproduction which, in different forms, developed in the years 1960s and 1970s, with emphasis on aspects of the work The Reproduction, by Bourdieu and Passeron, which, second Charlotte where it is approached finds your more finished form. Charlotte stresses still aspects of construction in Bourdieu what relate at positions school children of students and their consequent future social positions to the positions of parents, indicating that differences in parents' social position indicate differences in children's school positions and, in the future, your position's social. In this item, co-author quotes that, according to the theory of Bourdieu, there is the reproduction of differences. How does this reproduction work? Through differences. Differences in parental positions correspond to differences in capital cultural and in habitus provisions cited in manner what you sons will occupy. Positions many different at school. Charlotte, 2000, page 20, italics from the author. Charlotte criticizes Bourdieu's methods of analysis that simply seek a homology of structure between systems of differences, despite recognizing a relationship between school failure and social differences. In any case, it calls into question the statistics that determine the social position of the family, through the socio-professional category of the father, and the mother who, usually belongs to another socio-professional category, is the one who has a decisive role in education of children. It is also worth remembering that, in France, in the case of immigrant families from the north of Africa, who plays this one paper it is the sister older. In this case, nor dad, nor not even the mother. In addition, he argues that the socio-professional category of the father, in itself, does not take into account influencing factors in school success such as the social position of grandparents who in the countries of origin, in the case of immigrants, they may have had very different positions from their parents in France, evoking, in a way, the importance of identity and cultural affirmation, seen in Lahayer's work, as of from factors determinants of success school as popular media in your search. Others factors what has influence about O Performance School from students, and that are ignored. by statistics that only take into account the socio-professional category of parents in the matter of school failure or success, according to reproduction theories, are religious education and political militancy. This means that the analyses should not be restricted to the family position, but also pay attention to practices educational family, as stated Charlotte. Once again evoking the higher 1997 in the context of religious education or militancy policy, family educational practices, as factors that influence school performance, are always linked, in some way, to the universe of cultural and identity affirmation of origin of the family. In this way, they reaffirm that the enrichment of the symbolic universe of origin of the individuals has a direct influence on the success of the assimilation of symbolic capital, which is the arbitrary of the school culture, without it being, in this way, inculcated, and in the consequent success school of individuals in the media popular. Charlotte also states that there are individual and particular factors that make two children, daughters of the same parents, of identical social positions, can have school performances many different. This depends more on the relationships that each one has in their social environment, with their equals and with you adults, of what in the position social similar. In short, Charlotte 2000, page 23 cites a set of dimensions that must be taken into account for an analysis of the performance school from the students, though failure school has something to see with the position social of family, without reduce that position the a place in one socio-professional nomenclature, nor the family the a position, the singularity and the story from individuals, the meaning that students give to their position, their history, the situations they live and your own singularity, your activity effective, your practices, the specificity of that activity. At the field of knowing, so much at the scope of meaning what you individuals confer to your position, how much at the scope of their effective activities and practices. I refer again to the research by Higher 1997 that relates these factors as constituent parts of the whole set of identity affirmation and cultural, which are a constant in the unlikely school success in means popular. Charlotte goes further, and goes so far as to claim that social origin is not the cause of failure school, questioning the sociologies of reproduction in general, which, according to him, establish the existence of a statistical correlation between parents' social positions and school positions of children. It also states that much more is attributed to these sociologies than they said, and, in general, they consider that the position of the parents produces that of the children, which, in fact, is much most than he was effectively shown in Search in Bourdieu, for example. In this scope, co-author comments, if we combine these two deviations in meaning, translate correlation between position and social and school status by correlation between social origin and school failure, and translate reproduction by act of producing, we arrive at the idea according to which the social origin is the cause of children's school failure. There was an exchange of objects. These are no longer the positions, but yea the origin and o failure. O way of explanation also he was transformed. Explain though it is most show a homology in structure, but resort the a cause. This is how Bourdieu's theory and, more broadly, the sociologies of reproduction, were interpreted by public opinion and teachers. The idea of reproduction he was admitted, and it suits often of explanation for failure school. If certain children fail at school, it would be because of their family background, and, today, of its origin cultural, that is, ethnic. It is true that school failure has something to do with social inequality. But this does not allow to say that the social origin is the cause of the failure school. Charlotte, 2000, page 24, italics of the author. In this passage, the author reaffirms that the theories of reproduction that create this determinism sociological theory, which existentialists spoke about Bourdieu's work, are an interpretation misguided and exaggerated than these theories of reproduction themselves. In fact, never came to say and claim. For corroborate it his position, we must remember the systematic gives violence symbolic, gives which Bourdieu and Passeron 1992 speak. This is the imposition of ruling class culture by strength correlations that make it the only one worthy of being acquired and studied. At school, the inculcation of this cultural arbitrariness takes place through the pedagogical action of the teacher who, through its pedagogical authority, at the same time legitimizes the pedagogical action and thus realizes the pedagogical work. In this way, It makes the inculcation of this cultural arbitrariness become fixed, for in addition from space gives living room in classroom and gives action pedagogical initial. When occurring in the education system as a whole, this process generates the reproduction of relationships cultural what, per your turn, has consequences immediate at the process of relations social. Therefore, what Bourdieu and Passeron's sociology of reproduction says is that the reproduction of relations cultural has immediate consequences in the reproduction of social relations, and does not say in any the moment, explicitly, that the socio-economic origin and the social position of the parents determine the children's school performance. Bourdieu and Passeron thus center their discussion of reproduction on the fact that it occurs from the reproduction of cultural relations imposed by the society in which this arbitrary cultural to be taxed as something that to be inculcated necessarily, it is owed great responsible for this reproduction of cultural and, consequently, social relations. Bourdieu and Passeron, however, recognize that this cultural arbitrariness by the simple fact of calling it cultural arbitrariness is not the culture itself, but something they define as symbolic capital to be acquired as a condition of success school. That does with what let's believe what that theory of Bourdieu and Passeron points at. Inexorable variance of school failure, the parents' socio-economic position, as well as their cultural origin, are the result of the pessimism with which the authors saw the reversal of this framework and the interpretations that the Academy has given to these theories, which created the so-called sociological determinism, so criticized by other currents, especially by existentialists and by theories in Lahire and Charlotte. As we have seen, Lahire 1997 points to the possibility of reversing this situation exposed by Bourdieu and Passeron without contesting its validity through elements such as the family structure, educational practices and the schooling of at least one of the family members, serving as a schooling reference, and the child's identity and cultural affirmation this aids their community. In this way, for Lahire, it is possible to reverse the framework imposed by the reproduction of social relations from these spots. I return, once again, to the experience I had at the Ramakrishna Foundation, in India, where watched situations that corroborate the theory in Lahire. Capital symbolic, one variant normative of the English language, was assimilated from the enrichment of the symbolic universe of the Sanskrit and Telugu Indian culture, thus making cultural arbitrariness and capital symbolic were not imposed and inculcated, but rather assimilated as factors that enrich the symbolic universe itself. In this way, they did not reproduce the system of symbolic violence demonstrated in the theory of reproduction of Bourdieu and Passeron, because, in this way, what happened by the non-inculcation of cultural arbitrariness, it was not the reproduction of cultural relations, since there was no reproduction of culture, but rather, recreation from the culture itself and the universe itself symbolic, without what were violated, belittled or assaulted. Capital symbolic was added. Charlotte, in turn, argues that students who fail are not disabled. Socio-cultural, but that certain students fail and that, not infrequently, they are in families of high popular. However, this failure cannot be attributed to the family condition. As a proposal of combat to failure school us means popular, Charlotte, differently in Lahire, in some spots, proposes one sociology of subject that he defines as being, the student in a situation of failure is a student, which immediately induces us to think as such, in reference the your position at the space school, to the knowledge, that activities and at specific school rules. But the student is the child or an adolescent, that is, a subject confronted with the need to learn and with the presence, in his world, of knowledge several. Charlotte, 2000, page 33, italics from the author. Charlotte defines subject as a human being, social and singular. As a human being, the subject is open to a world that is not just the here and now, he has desires and is moved by them, and it is in relationship with others beings humans, subjects like him. While to be social, subject born and grows up in the family be it biological or surrogate occupies a position in the social space and inscribed in social relationships. And while to be singular, subject it is exemplary single gives species, with a history, which interprets and gives meaning to the world, to the position it occupies in it, to its relations with other subjects, to their own history and uniqueness. The subject acts in the world and on the world. For him, knowledge presents itself as a need to learn and as a way of being in a world with people, objects and locations carriers of knowing. and in this relationship, O subject it produces and it is produced per. Middle of Education Charlotte, 2000, page 33. We see that, in the construction of the definition of subject, Charlotte does not rule out the existence of being belonging to a social body, which brings him closer to both Bourdieu and Lahire in this aspect. However, unlike Bourdieu, he defines this subject as a singular and single copy of the human species, which performs transformer about the world. In both cases, both Lahire and Charlotte outline ways of reversing the situation exposed by Bourdieu. The construction social identity is one common concern to the two authors, being what Charlotte also pores over about the construction identity subjective. Another point in common between the two authors is that, despite criticizing the sociology of reproduction, none of them calls into question what Bourdieu postulates, with regard to the fact that the reproduction of cultural relations have a direct relationship with the reproduction of social relations. In this way, the consensus is created between Bourdieu, Charlotte and Lahire, that the reversal of the situation exposed by Bourdieu's sociology of reproduction lies in the breakdown of the reproduction of cultural relations. And, on the other hand, the two authors who criticize this sociology, place the identity affirmation and cultural as a determining factor in this issue, a concept understood as the central point of this study.